I knew my sister hated me, but I didn't know how far she'd go until she slid a birthday gift across the table and laughed. A DNA test. "Maybe this will explain why you're another man's mistake," she said, loud enough for every fork to stop mid-air. I swallowed the shame, mailed the kit, and waited. Months later, our family's estate lawyer requested an urgent meeting regarding Grace Ellington. My mother went pale. Naomi stopped smiling. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. They already knew what I was about to find out. Most people picture family as a soft place to land. Mine always felt more like a house with cold floors, beautiful from the outside, freezing once you stepped in. Growing up in the Ellington home in Denver, I learned early how to make myself small. I was the quiet child, the one who did her homework without being asked, the one who disappeared into corners so my mother wouldn't sigh and my sister wouldn't sneer. Even then, Naomi's world seemed to orbit at the center of everything. She had a way of commanding attention without earning it. Loud laughter, dramatic stories, a talent for turning every room into her stage. And my mother, Evelyn, applauded her every move. When Naomi got a B on a test, she was well-rounded. When I brought home straight A's, Mom blinked like she had forgotten who I was for a moment before saying, "That's nice, Grace. Can you help set the table?" By the time I reached 35, I'd built a life far from that house. Austin suited me: quiet mornings, simple routines, the kind of stability I'd never had as a child. I worked as a financial analyst, dressed in soft, neutral tones, and tried not to think about the constant ache that came from being the forgotten daughter. But when my father, James Ellington, passed away, the gravity of our family pulled me back. He had been the only steady thing in that house, a man of few words, but a surprising warmth. In the small moments, a hand on my shoulder, a proud nod at my college graduation. I didn't know then that he carried a secret darker than anything I could imagine. 3 months after the funeral, Mom insisted we have a small birthday dinner at the old house. Her voice over the phone was too bright, too rehearsed, as if she were reading lines someone else had given her. When I stepped through the front door, I smelled the familiar mix of lemon polish and old books. The chandelier glowed, but the house felt emptier without Dad's quiet presence. Naomi sat at the kitchen table, flipping through resort brochures, tanned from some recent trip, barely glancing at me as I entered. Mom poured herself more wine than usual, her hands trembling slightly. Something unspoken hung in the air like a storm that hadn't broken yet. I tried asking about the will, gently, respectfully. Mom froze, her smile stiff. "We're just not ready yet," she said. But her eyes flicked to Naomi, and Naomi smirked like she knew a secret I didn't. Looking back, the dinner was never about celebrating my birthday. It was about setting the stage for my humiliation. The tension that night didn't arrive in one sharp moment. It crept in slowly, like a draft under a closed door. Every small detail felt off. Naomi kept glancing at me with this expectant look, as if she were waiting for a cue only she and my mother had rehearsed. Mom's wine glass was never empty, though she barely drank from it. Her fingers just circled the stem over and over like she needed something to hold on to. Dinner itself was a performance. Naomi talked nonstop: her job, her husband, her plans to redo her kitchen in a French farmhouse aesthetic. Mom laughed at every comment, even the unfunny ones. When I spoke, the room seemed to dim like someone turned down the volume of my existence. Halfway through the meal, Naomi leaned back, eyes glinting. "So, Grace," she said sweetly, still working at that same firm in Austin. Before I could answer, she jumped back into another story about herself. It wasn't a question. It was a reminder: you are background noise. Still, something else simmered beneath her smug expression. Anticipation. Calculation. When Mom stood to bring out dessert, a small, store-bought cake she hadn't even bothered to plate, Naomi pushed back her chair dramatically. "Actually," she said, reaching for a glossy box wrapped in silver paper, "I brought a birthday gift. Something I think you'll find enlightening." Mom's face drained of color. "Naomi." But Naomi ignored her, sliding the box across the table toward me like it contained evidence instead of a present. "Go on," she said, her smile razor-thin. "Open it." I peeled back the paper, a strange stillness settling over me. Inside was a DNA testing kit. The room went silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. Naomi leaned in, laughing under her breath. Maybe this will explain why you're another man's mistake in this family. The words echoed sharp and deliberate. Mom flinched. I saw it. But she said nothing. The humiliation stung, but the fear in Mom's eyes, that felt like the real truth, slipping through the cracks. Naomi hadn't just insulted me. She'd exposed something she wasn't supposed to say out loud. Later that night in my old bedroom, the walls still painted the soft blue I had chosen at 15. I searched through old boxes, like someone looking for proof of their own existence. At the back of my closet, I found an envelope that didn't belong with the others. The dust around it had been disturbed recently. Inside was a photograph of younger Evelyn holding me as a baby while standing next to a man I didn't recognize. On the back, in my mother's handwriting, "Forgive me." My hands shook as I took pictures of everything. Then I turned to the DNA kit Naomi had delivered like a weapon. She had wanted me to take it. She had wanted something to happen. Fine. I mailed it the next morning, not because Naomi wanted me to, but because I needed to know what truth she was so eager to weaponize. The results arrived 5 weeks later on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I was at my desk in Austin, half listening to the hum of the office vents when the notification appeared on my phone. I expected dread. What I didn't expect was clarity, sharp, cold, undeniable. No biological relationship detected with the Ellington family. My breath hitched, but I kept reading. A suggested match to the Hartman lineage. A name I had never spoken, never heard, suddenly tied to me by blood. It didn't hurt the way I imagined. It felt like confirmation of something I had always sensed I was a guest in my own childhood, never a daughter. What shook me more came next. When I sent the results to our family group chat, nothing dramatic, just a screenshot and a simple question. Does anyone want to explain this? My phone buzzed almost instantly. Mom called sobbing. Not from remorse, but from fear. "Grace, sweetheart, please delete that. You don't understand. This is complicated. Things happened a long time ago. We moved past them." She never apologized. She never addressed the decades I spent feeling like a burden in her home. She just begged me to bury the truth again. But Naomi didn't call. She texted. Just 4 words. "Well, now you know." Cold, satisfied. As if she'd been waiting half her life for the moment I discovered I didn't belong. That night, I called her, shaking with questions I didn't know how to ask. She answered on the 3rd ring, her voice dripping with irritation. "Why Grace? Why now?" I demanded. "Why push this? Why humiliate me?" She laughed softly, a sound that hit like ice. "Because I've kept this family's secret for 20 years. Because Mom owed me. Because you've played victim long enough. And now the right people will finally get what they deserve." She hung up. Those words clung to me like smoke. The next morning, I started asking quiet questions. I spoke to family friends, old neighbors, people who had known my parents before Naomi and I were born. What emerged chilled me. Naomi had been digging for months, meeting estate lawyers, hinting about upcoming changes, talking as if Dad's estate already belonged to her. I needed help, real help. The kind Dad would have insisted I seek. So I hired an attorney, Sarah Eng, known for her work in complicated inheritance disputes. I brought her everything: the DNA results, the photograph screenshots of Naomi's messages, the odd conversations, the fear in Mom's voice. Sarah listened, expression still taking notes like she was assembling a puzzle. "Your instincts are right," she said finally. "This isn't just resentment. Someone is building a case to erase you." 3 days later, I got the call that changed everything. Mr. Dalton, our longtime estate lawyer, sounded unusually formal. "Grace, your father left instructions for a will reading under specific circumstances. Those circumstances have now been met. I think you should be prepared for what you're going to hear." Prepared? I doubt anyone could have been. The morning of the will reading, Denver felt colder than I remembered. Not a seasonal cold, but the kind that sinks into bone, the kind that feels like a warning. Sarah and I arrived early at the downtown building where Mr. Dalton's office occupied the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows, dark wood, the kind of place where truths didn't hide, they echoed. We chose seats near the window, out of the direct line of fire. Sarah whispered, Observe everything. Speak only when necessary. Her calm steadiness eased the tightness in my chest. Mom arrived next. She looked exhausted, like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was hastily pinned back, and she clutched her purse with both hands as though it were the only thing keeping her upright. She didn't greet me, didn't even meet my eyes. She sank into a chair at the far end of the table, staring at the polished surface as though it might swallow her whole. Then Naomi entered. Her heels clicked sharply against the marble floor, each step carrying a smug confidence that bordered on theatrical. She wore an expensive suit, cream-colored, perfectly tailored, and heavy makeup that made her look sharper, harder. And of course, she brought her own attorney, a man I recognized from billboards, boasting about aggressive estate litigation. Naomi gave me a slow smile, one corner lifted higher than the other. "Grace," she said, as if greeting someone irrelevant, but her eyes gleamed with expectation. She believed she had already won. Mr. Dalton entered last, carrying a thick folder. He moved with the deliberate calm of someone who understood the weight of what he was about to unleash. When he reached the head of the table, he rested a hand on the folder and looked at each of us one by one. Before we begin, he said, "I want to note that James Ellington left explicit instructions for how this reading should proceed. He anticipated complications. Everything I am about to share was prepared with full knowledge of circumstances that some of you may find surprising." Naomi shifted her smirk, faltering. Dalton opened the folder and began reading the will. "I, James Robert Ellington, declare this my final will and testament. I leave 70% of my estate, including the family home investment accounts and assets, to my daughter, Grace Ellington." Silence snapped across the room like a whip. Naomi shot to her feet. "She is not his daughter," she shouted. "We have DNA proof. She has no legal—" Dalton held up a hand. "Please sit. There is more." Reluctantly, she did, though her jaw clenched so tightly I thought she might crack a tooth. Dalton continued reading. "I have known since Grace was 2 years old that she is not my biological child. I chose to raise her anyway. I choose to leave her my legacy because she alone has proven worthy of it. This decision requires no further validation." Naomi's complexion drained to a pasty gray. Mom closed her eyes, pain tightening her features. But Dalton wasn't finished. 8 months before his death, Mr. Ellington hired a private investigator to document any attempts to manipulate or interfere with his estate. The investigator gathered substantial evidence. He placed a stack of documents on the table: payments, withdrawals, bills, and meeting logs demonstrating Naomi Ellington's efforts to pressure her father into altering his will, including unauthorized withdrawals totaling $50,000 during his illness. Naomi's attorney stiffened. "We weren't informed Dalton cut him off. You were not required to be." Additionally, the investigation documented consultations with 3 estate lawyers, conversations about upcoming changes to the family inheritance, and the purchase of a DNA test mailed to Naomi's home address and gift-wrapped. Naomi's eyes widened. "That's ridiculous," she said, voice shaking. "That was a joke." Dalton set down the final document, a handwritten note in my father's unmistakable script. "Mr. Ellington requested that I read this aloud." He unfolded the page. "Naomi, I know what you've been planning. I watched you try to manipulate your mother. I hoped you would choose differently. These consequences are your own doing." A sound escaped Naomi's throat, part gasp, part growl. Her attorney leaned toward her. "Do not contest this," he whispered harshly. "There's a no contest clause. You will lose everything." But Naomi was spiraling. "This is fraud," she spat. "Grace manipulated him. She tricked a dying man." Sarah stood. Her voice was quiet but powerful. "The will explicitly acknowledges Grace's parentage and documents Mr. Ellington's reasoning. Any contest would be frivolous and trigger the no contest clause, including repayment of outstanding loans, approximately $200,000. Naomi's face twisted. "That's not a loan. He gave me that money." "Not according to the estate records," Dalton replied calmly. Mom finally spoke, her voice a fragile whisper. "Naomi, stop." But Naomi couldn't. Years of entitlement, bitterness, and fear collided all at once. "This should be mine," she hissed. All of it. I'm the real daughter. I'm the one who stayed. I stood slowly, my voice steady. You didn't stay, Naomi. You controlled. You threatened. You built your life on secrets you never earned. She turned toward me, wild-eyed. You don't deserve, Grace, Dalton said gently. There is something else your father left. He opened a smaller envelope addressed to me. Inside was a short letter. Grace, you spent your life believing you were invisible. You were not. I saw your strength, your kindness, your integrity. You were my daughter not by blood, but by choice, and I leave you my legacy with absolute certainty that you will honor it. My vision blurred. When I looked up, Naomi finally understood. This wasn't my victory. It was her defeat crafted by the man she underestimated most. The legal fallout came faster than anyone expected. Naomi's attorney withdrew the next morning, leaving her scrambling for someone willing to take a case that was already collapsing under its own weight. When she attempted to contest the will anyway, the judge dismissed it within minutes. The no contest clause was airtight, the evidence overwhelming. Her inheritance vanished. The loan she'd taken from Dad, $200,000, converted into personal debt owed back to the estate. And the $50,000 in unauthorized withdrawals, she was given 1 year to repay it or face further legal action. For the first time in my life, Naomi looked small. Not humbled, just cornered by the consequences she'd always managed to outrun. Mom came to see me a week later. She sat on my Austin apartment couch, hands folded, eyes red-rimmed. She told me everything the truth about my biological father, the agreement made decades ago, the guilt she carried but never confronted. I listened, but I didn't reach for her. Some wounds required distance, not closeness. I want to make things right, she whispered. I believe you, I said. But making things right starts with letting me live without carrying your secrets. In the months that followed, I stepped back from Denver entirely. I managed the estate with Sarah's help, settled accounts, and chose quietly, deliberately, the life I wanted next. It was the first time I made a choice without asking who it might disappoint. I left Denver behind and built a quieter life in Oregon where the lies couldn't reach me anymore. Some endings aren't loud. They're choosing peace over pain. And if you've ever been the overlooked one, know this: you deserve better than the people who failed to see you. Share your story below and subscribe for the next one. I knew birthdays could be messy, but I never expected mine to end with my sister's hands shoving a cake into my face so hard the world snapped sideways. I remember the smear of frosting, the sting of blood mixing into it, and Rowan's laughter, bright, sharp, deliberate, as I hit the floor. People rushed in only to shrug. It was just a joke while my vision pulsed blue and white. I tried to believe them. I tried to stand. But the next morning at the ER, the doctor froze at my x-ray and asked me a question no sister should ever trigger. I grew up learning to swallow things, small hurts, sharp comments, moments that should have felt wrong but were brushed off as harmless. In my family, peace was a performance, and I played my part well. I was the quiet one, the steady one, the daughter who didn't need attention because, as Mom liked to say, Avery's strong. She can handle herself. What she meant was simpler. Rowan needed the spotlight more. Rowan was born 18 months after me, but you'd think she was the first child, the favorite child, the son we were all expected to orbit. She had that kind of presence, loud, dramatic, magnetic. When she walked into a room, Mom lit up. When I walked in, Mom softened polite, like she'd just remembered I existed. I learned early that Rowan's moods dictated the temperature of the entire house, and Marlene, our mother, did anything to keep her smiling. And me? I fit myself into the cracks. I tried not to question the small things, the way Rowan accidentally bumped me into the coffee table when we were 10, the way she whispered clumsy after I tripped down the stairs in high school, the way she insisted on carrying my bags at family gatherings, only for the contents to end up mysteriously spilled. Mom always reacted the same way: Avery, don't be dramatic. Your sister loves you. So I stopped asking for help. I focused on work, built a life in my small Seattle apartment, kept my distance when I could. But Rowan had a talent for finding ways to stay in the center of my orbit. Little comments, little digs moments she turned into jokes. Everyone laughed at, except me. And every time I tried to defend myself, I heard the same line: "You're too sensitive." Rowan didn't mean it. That's why on the night of my 36th birthday, even as blood slid warm down my neck and frosting blurred my vision, part of me still wondered if maybe I was overreacting. Maybe the pain blooming at the base of my skull was just bad luck. Maybe Rowan's grin, so wide, so sharp, wasn't satisfaction, but poor timing. Maybe the laughter around me wasn't cruelty, but confusion. I kept replaying the moment as I drove home, the steering wheel cold beneath my palms. I tried to believe it was just a joke, just an accident, just Rowan being Rowan. But lying awake that night, head pounding, something felt different. An instinct deep in my chest, whispering that this time, something was very, very wrong. And by the next morning, when I staggered into the ER, I would learn that instinct wasn't exaggeration. It was memory trying to surface. By morning, the headache had sharpened into something vicious, each heartbeat a hammer against the back of my skull. Bright light made my vision double, and a wave of nausea rolled through me the moment I tried to sit up. I told myself it was fine, that all I needed was water and rest, but my own body disagreed. When I touched the tender spot behind my ear, my fingers came away sticky with dried blood. That was the moment fear crept in. I dressed slowly, gripping the wall when the room swayed. Driving to the ER felt reckless, but calling someone felt worse. I could already hear Mom's voice. "You don't need a doctor. You bruise easily. Stop making a scene." And Rowan would laugh, a light dismissive sound that always made me feel smaller than I already did. So I went alone. Seattle's ER was busy, but when the nurse saw me flinch at the overhead lights, she guided me into an exam room without hesitation. I answered her questions. When did the injury happen? How did it happen? Was there loss of consciousness? Each answer feeling strangely heavy. Saying out loud that my sister shoved a cake into my face shouldn't have sounded like a medical emergency, yet here I was, trembling under the paper gown. Dr. Hanley entered with a gentle knock, his expression calm but attentive. He asked me to follow his finger squeeze, his hands, touch my nose, smile. I did my best, though the room kept tilting as if it wanted to remind me gravity wasn't on my side. "Let's get some scans," he said softly, "just to be safe. Safe." I wondered when I had stopped feeling that word applied to my family. The imaging room hummed with cold machinery. Lying there, staring at the ceiling, I kept replaying Rowan's face, her grin, the way her eyes flickered with something sharp, something triumphant. For years, I had explained that expression away, misread it, excused it. But now, with my skull throbbing and the world spinning, excuses felt suddenly fragile. When Dr. Hanley returned, he wasn't calm anymore. He pulled a stool close and turned the monitor so I could see. "Avery," he began, voice low, "you have a hairline fracture. It's not severe, but it's real. And it wasn't just from yesterday." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" He clicked to another image. "This here, a rib on your left side, shows signs of an older fracture. Based on the healing, it happened roughly 3 years ago. 3 years ago, the staircase fall, Rowan behind me, her arms around me afterward, whispering, 'You're so dramatic. You just slipped.' I felt the edges of the exam table dig into my palms as my breath thinned. Hanley watched me carefully, as though trying to decide how much truth I could handle. Then he exhaled, picked up the phone mounted to the wall, and said the words that shifted my entire world. "I need to report this. It's required." Required. As in serious. As in not a joke. As in not my imagination. When he hung up, his eyes met mine with quiet certainty. "Avery, someone did this to you." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. The words, "someone did this to you," echoed in my head louder than the beeping in the hallway, louder than the pounding inside my skull. I had spent years absorbing blame, shrinking myself, convincing my mind that Rowan's presence during every injury was coincidence. Accidents happen. Sisters, roughhouse. I'm just clumsy. But Dr. Hanley's steady eyes left no room for the stories I'd told myself. A soft knock came before a woman stepped into the room, Detective Carver. She introduced herself with a measured calm, the kind that suggested she'd seen this pattern too many times. She pulled a chair close, sat at eye level, and opened a small notebook. "Avery," she said gently, "I'm here because your injuries raise concerns. I'd like to ask you a few questions." My throat tightened. "About Rowan." Her gaze didn't waver. About your safety. It was strange the way those two concepts overlapped. She began with straightforward questions. Who was at the birthday dinner? Had there been alcohol? Where exactly was Rowan standing? Had there been previous injuries? Each answer landed heavier than the last. And when she asked if anyone had ever discouraged me from seeing a doctor after an accident, something inside me cracked open. Yes, I whispered. My sister. Every time. Detective Carver wrote quietly, then looked up. Did you believe her reasons I didn't know how to answer? Did I? Or did I just want to believe them because the alternative was unbearable? I stared down at my trembling hands, remembering Rowan placing an ice pack on my ribs 3 years ago, insisting I didn't need medical bills, calling me overly dramatic. Remembering her scoffing when I tripped in the parking lot, joking loudly that I should be bubble-wrapped. Remembering her moving quickly to clean up any mess caused by my injuries, always positioning herself as the helpful one. It's like she wanted to be the first person I turned to, I said quietly, and the last person I doubted. Detective Carver nodded as though that made perfect tragic sense. Before she could ask the next question, the door flew open. My mother's voice cut through the room before I even registered her face. Avery Lynn Dalton, what on earth are you telling these people? She swept inside with Gerald in tow, her expression a storm of indignation and fear. Rowan wasn't with them yet. Somehow her presence clung to the room anyway. A fracture, Mom demanded. From a birthday joke. This is ridiculous. Tell them you're confused. You bruise easily. You've always been sensitive. Sensitive. Dramatic. Overreacting. Words that had shaped my entire childhood now pressed against the bruised edges of my adulthood. Detective Carver stood posture, calm but unyielding. Mrs. Dalton, I need you to step back. Your daughter is speaking with me privately. Mom's jaw tightened as she glared at me, betrayal twisting her features. Not betrayal of what Rowan might have done, but betrayal of the fact that I dared speak. And in that moment, something inside me shifted again, not a crack this time, but a settling, a decision. For the first time in my life, I didn't shrink. Mom, I said, voice steady despite the tremor beneath it. I'm not confused. Her eyes widened, furious and disbelieving. I turned fully toward Detective Carver. I want to continue. Detective Carver didn't waste time once I gave consent. She asked Mom and Gerald to step outside, and despite Mom's protests, the detective's tone made it clear this wasn't optional. When the door finally closed, the room felt strangely lighter, as if removing my mother's presence untangled a knot I'd carried for decades. Carver sat again. Avery, I'm going to be honest with you. The pattern you've described, the injuries, the minimization, the pressure not to seek medical help, it's concerning. And combined with what Dr. Hanley found, we need to treat this seriously. I nodded, though the reality of what she implied hovered just out of reach, too large to take in all at once. We've requested the restaurant's security footage, she continued, and we'll be talking to every witness at your birthday. For now, I want you to focus on your safety. Do you feel safe going home? The question stunned me more than the diagnosis. Safe. The word felt foreign, like it belonged to other people's families. I'm not sure I admitted. Carver softened. That's an honest answer. It's a start. Before she could explain next steps, the door cracked open again. This time it was Elise, my aunt. She hovered hesitantly in the doorway until Carver nodded permission for her to enter. Elise stepped inside, her eyes glossy with something that looked too heavy to carry alone. Avery, she whispered, I should have come sooner. Her voice trembled, and when she reached for my hand, hers was cold. I tried calling you last night, she said, but when I didn't reach you, I had a feeling something wasn't right. She looked at Carver. Detective, can I speak to you both? I have information. Carver motioned for her to sit. Go ahead. Elise swallowed hard. I've seen Rowan hurt Avery before. My entire body stilled. Elise continued, voice shaking. When Avery was little, there were moments small at first that I didn't know how to explain. I told myself it was sibling rivalry or accidents or kids not knowing their strength. But as they got older, Rowan changed. Or maybe I finally saw it clearly. She wrung her hands. I saw her push Avery on the stairs once. Avery was maybe 12. Everyone thought she slipped. but I was standing at the top landing. Rowan shoved her, hard. My breath caught. I remembered that fall how Mom scolded me for ruining the holiday photos with a bruised cheek, how Rowan hovered next to me offering cookies and fake sympathy. Elise wasn't finished, and 3 years ago, after Eleanor's funeral, she took a trembling breath. I overheard something. Rowan found out about the Victorian house. She didn't say it to your face, Avery, but she was furious. I heard her telling someone on the phone that accidents happen and that if you were less competent, she'd be the one to manage everything. The room went very still. Even Detective Carver stopped writing. A cold shiver slid down my spine. Elise's voice cracked into a whisper. I should have told you sooner. I was scared of Marlene, scared she would cut me out entirely. But after what happened last night, I can't stay quiet anymore. Carver nodded slowly. Thank you, Elise. This helps us build a clearer timeline. She stood. Avery, I'll keep you updated. For now, Elise will take you home. And stay away from your sister until we've completed our interviews. I agreed because the truth was simple. I didn't want to see Rowan. Not until I understood who she really was. 2 days passed in a blur of phone calls, updates, and long silences inside my apartment. Elise stayed with me, insisting she wasn't leaving me alone. I didn't argue. The quiet company felt like a soft landing after years of walking on glass. On the 3rd day, Detective Carver called. We viewed the footage, she said. Avery, it was deliberate. The words pulsed in my ear. She angled the cake. She looked over her shoulder first. And after you fell, there's a moment, barely a second, where she smiled before pretending to panic. A cold wave washed through me. I didn't respond, so Carver continued. We also obtained her phone. There are notes that detail past incidents, dates that match your injuries, and something labeled future. My chest tightened. Future projected opportunities. When you'd be alone. When you'd be most vulnerable. Avery. This wasn't spontaneous. She planned patterns. I felt Elise's hand on my back as I sank onto the couch. We're moving forward with charges, Carver said. I need you to be present at a family meeting Sunday evening. We'll arrest Rowan there. A tremor rippled through me. Why in front of everyone? Because this time, Carver said the entire family needs to see the truth. Sunday came too quickly. Elise drove me to Mom's house, the same house that had held decades of quiet dismissals and rearranged memories. When I stepped inside, Rowan was already there, laughing, chatting, glowing with the ease of a person who believes they've won. She saw me and smirked. Oh, look who's finally healed. Mom hummed disapprovingly. Avery, don't start anything. Start anything. As if I had ever been the one who did. Before I could answer, a knock echoed across the dining room. Detective Carver stepped inside with 2 officers. Rowan Dalton, she said, voice clear, you're under arrest. The room erupted. Mom shouted, This is absurd. Gerald backed away pale. Elise stayed rigid beside me. But Rowan, her transformation was instant. The pleasant facade drained, replaced by something sharp and feral. You're kidding, Rowan said, laughing too loudly. For what? A birthday joke, Carver didn't flinch. For assault. And for evidence found in your possession indicating intent to cause future harm. Rowan's eyes flicked toward me, narrowing. You think you're so perfect, Avery? You think you deserve that house? You think Eleanor loved you more, she only pitied you? Mom gasped. Rowan kept going, unraveling in real time. I've cleaned up after her my whole life. She was always pathetic, always fragile, and everyone acted like I should feel guilty for being stronger. Carver cut in. That's enough. But Rowan lunged forward, pointing at me with trembling rage. You ruined everything the day you were born. And there it was, the truth she'd hidden beneath 20 years of smiles. The officers stepped in, cuffing her wrists as she thrashed. Mom, tell them Avery is exaggerating, tell them. But Marlene wasn't moving. Her face had gone ghostly, white eyes wide with a dawning horror I'd never seen before. Maybe for the first time, she finally understood the monster she had protected. Rowan's voice cracked into a scream as she was led out of the house. And I stood there, heart pounding, realizing the world had shifted again, this time in my favor. The aftermath unfolded quietly, almost gently, as if the world was trying to hand me a softness I'd never been allowed before. Within weeks, Rowan accepted a plea arrangement, supervised probation, mandatory therapy, and a long-term order preventing her from coming near me. It wasn't dramatic, but it was justice, steady, undeniable. Mom barely spoke during the hearings. When the evidence was read aloud, the footage, the notes, the old injuries, something in her seemed to collapse inward. One afternoon, she called to tell me she'd started therapy. Not for Rowan, for herself. For the years she spent denying what she didn't want to see. I didn't know what to say, so I said the only honest thing: I hope it helps. The Victorian house became my quiet refuge. Restoring it felt like restoring myself room by room, memory by memory. And when I opened the doors as the first meeting space for the Eleanor Center, a resource hub for people trying to untangle family-made wounds, I felt something I'd never felt growing up: safe, seen, free. Some people say family loyalty means enduring anything, but I've learned that real loyalty, real love doesn't demand silence in the face of harm. It protects, it heals, and sometimes it requires walking away from the people who taught you to doubt your own pain. I'm still learning what a healthy life looks like, still finding my footing inside the freedom I never expected to have. But if my story proves anything, it's that truth doesn't just break things apart. It clears space for something better. If you've ever carried a wound like mine, share your story below. And if you want more real stories like this, make sure you're subscribed. You're not alone.